Singapore-based What If Foods is shaking up the food industry, essentially aiming to make foods based on regenerative principles. The co-founder and CEO, Chris Langwallner, joins us now. Chris, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Absolute pleasure to being here.
Tell us about What If Foods.
What If Foods is an organization which is really planet-based. We tend to believe that we have a mandate to regenerate from the ground up, literally. So we do investigate a lot in degraded arable land, working with partnering farming communities, essentially today in West Africa, in Ghana. And we use a forgotten crop called the Bambara groundnut. That's a legume that helps fix nitrogen organically into the soils and helps therefore regenerate and restore the degraded arable land. We also use biochar as a means to actually supercharge that process, because biochar in degraded land is nothing but a battery that holds water back and releases nutrients slower, as well as a shelter for microbiomes. And all that process gets us then into a good crop that then is being converted to exciting food products that we distribute throughout Asia, but our biggest market today is the United States. So here we are.
So many questions for you based on just that answer alone. Chris, tell me about why Ghana? Why did this sort of process start in Africa?
Well, I was alerted for the longest time, probably for more than a decade now, of the huge problem we have with degraded land all over the world. We are losing about 25 soccer fields of arable land a minute to degradation. So therefore, the mandate I had in my mind is to find a way to utilize the degraded arable land if we look forward trying to feed a population that is 8.5 to 9 billion people in size. And if we don't do that, we will continue to see forests being and primary habitats being deforested and taken out to make way for the old system. And I couldn't live with myself looking at the mirror saying that's the best way of doing it. Quite the opposite is true. It was then a meeting in Jakarta where I met somebody from the Crops for the Future Institute out of KL actually. And it was in that meeting when I understood that there is a legume that actually grows on very poor soil with very little water to start with. And that thinking got me to really investigate into the Bambara groundnut, which is a Vigna subterrana. It's a bean essentially botanically. And I looked up the nutritional profile. I got fascinated by it. It is a wonderful, complete crop. It has all the essential amino acids. It has 20 to 25% protein. It has wonderful micronutrients, as well as complex carbohydrates and quality oils. So everything that the human needs. And therefore I got started to really investigate. What I found out pretty early on was that it originates in West Africa, in today Mali. The Bambara tribe was probably the first sort of human settlement that started to actually cultivate and grow the Bambara beans. And therefore, the Bambara tribe today is in Mali. They speak a language called Bambara. And therefore, entire West Africa refers to that particular bean as the Bambara bean because it comes from that particular place. So when we had to make a choice to go into sourcing directly with farming communities, we explored several options. We thought that we were basically latecomers in Nigeria, plus we had partners there already. But we were fascinated by the opportunities in northern parts of Ghana, particularly in and around Tamale. And that got us going. So here we are. This year we are going to partner with more than 6,000 farmers helping us to grow the Bambara groundnut in a very regenerative fashion that basically aims to restore the production capacity of that former degraded arable land.
And what that is also obviously doing is creating jobs within that particular region in Ghana.
Absolutely. Every farmer we partner with is responsible for an extended family. Some of them have 10 family members. So if I talk about 6,000 partnering farmers, there are probably 60,000 people already connected directly to the impact that we make. On top of it, we have about 20 people directly on the ground. They are shuttling out into the communities on a day-to-day basis. And as we expand our footprint in Western Africa, in particular Ghana, we will create more and more jobs. And I'm also very happy to say that a year ago, it was June last year, I kind of went through Accra and Tamale, and I looked at what's possible in Ghana. And what happened was that we agreed to actually start distributing our foods in Ghana as well. Fast forward, less than 9 months after we got started, you find us in probably 75% of all supermarkets in Ghana.
Wow.
They love it because it is an indigenous crop to them. They understand how good it actually is for their land, and they are loving it.
And what's the response been like elsewhere in the world?
So what's a BAM nut is the first question we hear everywhere.
Yes.
So sometimes you can be annoyed with that question, particularly if you're an insider into it. But it is a fantastic opportunity to have a conversation with consumers. We call them the better believers. It's a fantastic opportunity to have a conversation about something that is new and impactful and does all the wonderful things like restoring degraded arable land, like our impact that we have with farmers directly. For example, at 2.5 acres of a farmer growing the Bambara groundnut, we permanently lift them above the poverty line. And a simple question like, what's a BAM nut? Gets you going explaining that story. And folks love it.
So tell us, how do you take this amazing story in West Africa and transfer that story across to anywhere else in the world, like Asia, where there is lots of poverty, like parts of India? I mean, how do you take that story and use it everywhere else in the world?
So the easy answer is that we are entering a phase now where we have the first generation being educated from kindergarten onwards on sustainability, the Gen Zs. Those folks sniff through the sustainability BS immediately. They love deep stories. They love the multifaceted levels of issues that What If Foods resolves. So we opted some time ago to really speak to Gen Zs and letting them come in to our story, into our world, and be part of how we unfold one layer after another by doing so, by just growing a forgotten crop with communities directly and doing all the wonderful stuff, including biochar, for example. So it is the Gen Zs that we are talking to, and we have in-housed our communication. We are on TikTok, we are on Instagram. It's all about the social media world today, and this is how we spread the world.
What about that specific nut? Does that grow elsewhere in the world? I mean, is there a way of taking what you've done in Ghana and take it and do it, for example, in parts of Malaysia?
The colonizers in the early days, hundreds of years ago, took the Bambara groundnut. We believe so, at least. We think that the Dutch did it. They took the Bambara groundnut from West Africa and kind of dropped it on their journey. So we know of small pockets of communities in southern parts of Thailand, northern parts of Malaysia, as well as in Bogor on the Java island of Indonesia. They are growing the Bambara groundnut. Now, if you would see that particular Bambara groundnut to the Bambara groundnut that we actually use, you will not find really a comparison. Botanically, they are related, but the Bambara groundnut has 2,500 different land races evolved over the history, and therefore it got adopted in many, many places. So it grows essentially Southeast Asia in small pockets, but it is still a staple food for many communities in West Africa.
Okay. All right, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Chris Langwallner with us right here on the APAC Network.